All right, I'm watching through the streams and the tapes, and I'm going to figure out my thoughts. I've basically already covered this kind of thing that like Cammy has a dynamic ability. I already covered it in my like optimizing Cammy thing. At least in my notes, I've explained like where exactly Cammy's corner carry can be absolutely absurd. And can go from corner to corner, etc. But she also has a number of ways of getting side switches that also have meaningful corner carry, and this is an example of that, where if ever you land like any button, drive rush confirm on a standing opponent, and you have a level 1, you can always corner the opponent no matter where they are on the screen, okay? So if you're anywhere from here to here, so this corner to like around this spot is like the difference between putting them in this corner or putting them in the opposite corner. So if you're around here, then you can do that just off of the 3 bars in the level 1. If you're like around here, etc. So anywhere differentiating at this position, you can get a meaty on the opponent in the corner, no matter which corner you choose. Okay, this is an instance where there's a theoretical.
Oh, where did sitcom bloodbath go? I can't find it anymore.
Okay, 1 is a shimmy. Now, okay, let's like, so the starter, regardless of what it came from, the starter, crouch strong, drive rush, etc. in this range, so we're pretty close. We're closer from the midpoint of the screen to the corner. If we actually look at the exact spacing.
Bro, why the fuck is, where did sitcom bloodbath go? I can't find it anymore.
So we're about here. So if we were to replicate that, so this was done, which was 2825 damage, and I believe he starts the match with almost 3 bars. Okay, almost 3 bars. So practically, regardless of what you would have done, would have gotten that. So spending the super for 2825 damage. Now, in this instance, it was a shimmy, so it was a standing punish, so it could have been... I'm really bad at doing this on this side of the screen. So it could have been 2849 damage, so the exact same damage without spending any super. But let's add a super to that. So with a level 1, it could have gotten up to 3257, which is a 400 damage increase for the usage of the super. Now, so that's from what would have been optimal with no super, which was which is the standing route with the drive rush back roundhouse. Then, but let's say we take it a step further and instead we do a level 2 route. I keep forgetting they changed the input. So that would be level 2 route, so 3758. So that's a 900 damage increase from what would have been the optimal with no super. The extra benefit of this is that you would have built your level 3 from the first 2 hits, the crouch strong and then the drive rush back roundhouse, and then everything you do after the level 2 still builds you more super gauge. So this wouldn't be like spending 2 bars of super. This would technically be closer to spending like 1.3, 1.4 bars of super based on what you would build back, the 0.3 that you would build back for the rest of the combo. So relatively, so if you were to spend a level 1 there just to spend something, you would get a 400 damage increase. If you were to do the level 2 route, you would get a 900 damage increase for spending an additional like 0.7 bars of super, relatively speaking. But that was, I think, the last round of the match, right? So that would have perhaps been enough of a difference. The difference of 1 bar of super to 1.7 bars of super to make up may have been enough of a difference to remove or make it harder to get to level 3 in an opportunity that might have killed otherwise. I don't know, but like that's an area where like mathematically I think that the level 2 route makes sense to do there. But I would obviously defer to your experience and judgment on that. Okay, I don't necessarily have a point I want to make here, but this is how I would like go about thinking about this, where if I measure the match, I like study where things happened, where things went particularly wrong, and then I like look at the whole match and see how we could use reasonable judgment calls to make things structure in a way that's more controllable. Because the unfortunate thing here is, like, in the previous round, I looked at this situation and I was like, okay, block this. Certainly Cammy is in a position here where she could spend all of her drive gauge and do a bigger combo, build up to a level 3, and then kill with a level 3. So she could kill off of this combo right here. Chooses not to spend any resources. And of course it works out, theoretically, in a more optimal way, because you save all your meter and you still won the round. So theoretically better. I mean, technically better at that point in time, but then this round comes and there was never an opportunity to land the level 3 or even any amount of super because he just died in like 2 interactions here.
What is this bullshit?
So I look at that and I'm like, okay, clear excess of anytime that super is not being generated because you come into a round with a level 3 and any of the interactions, especially if you're on the back foot of taking damage, there's super on the table that you're not gaining because you're already full, and also it sucks to lose with all of your super. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, the last interaction where we could have used super but didn't, it was the right decision to not use super. So what does that mean? What does that tell us? Did we go back even farther to the first round and then see, was there an opportunity, I'm thinking, to use more super even earlier? Because the second round doesn't seem to matter as much, but we did lose the first round, so where could super been used here? It's difficult to say other than just gambling on a reversal, which doesn't necessarily matter here anyways. So yeah, by the time that we'd built level 1. So what I think about that and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of waste that's very unfortunate because of dying with the level 3 and stuff like that, and holding on to level 3 and then dying with it. So I'm like, where do we change the structure to make that less like chaotic and accidental? So how do we like, is there a way to change the game plan in which case we take fewer risks until we have at least 1 bar of super to make sure that we have opportunities to spend? Is there some other way we could play the gambling, guessing in the corner in a way that gives us more opportunities to make like judgment calls on whether or not to spend super? Are there more practical ways to use super? The characters that have installs don't have this problem because it's so easy for them to just... They don't have to land like a confirmed hit in order to get value out of their super. They just do the install. So those are like so strong. Not just in what they actually give the character, but just the sheer flexibility of super management is incomparable. Whereas like a character like this, like most of the cast, that has to land their super, that has to find a way to confirm into their supers, which are all attacks that are unsafe on block, you wind up with rounds like this where the super was just entirely unfortunate the whole way through. Yeah. Alright, here's a little spot for... Obviously, we already got to 3 bars, but we didn't need it at all to beat the first round. It wasn't a close round, and it built 3 bars, so there wasn't like a opportunity other than just to assert more assuredness and dominance in the first round, which was already won anyways. But anyways, in this interaction, so you probably want to spend super as quickly as possible. In this particular action, there's a number of routes you can do off of this. We can do routes that travel almost the full distance of the screen, depending on how much drive gauge we want to use, etc. But in general, I would say, how much drive gauge did you have when you did this? You had like full drive gauge. Okay, so yeah, you can spend 3 bars, or slightly less than 3 bars because it's an EX move, and you can do this. And this will reverse the corner and use a super. This is just my own, like, personal observation from watching, like, Punk and Kazunoko and anyone else, all the, like, a lot of the high-level Kami players and such around. But especially Punk, watching him, logically I get the sense that, like, dive kick, the methodology behind it is slightly different in this game than it was in past games, because I think that its risk and reward have made it more skewed, so that because of the existence of punish counter, now it more consistently yields combos if you use it in an instance where it goes over a button in neutral and punish counters them on the whiff punish. Whereas it also has much more risk because any random thing that tags it, which lots of things can do so quite easily, puts it in a float state. Some characters can take advantage of that heavier than others. But I get the sense, especially watching Punk, that Kami is probably better suited doing normal jump-ins with jump light kick like 60% of the time, and then using dive kick when they start getting antsy to hit them doing a later anti-air, or to augment to catch normals. But the risk is much lower, and her jump light kick is just a ridiculous jump button in the first place. It has like 10 active frames, and it beats a lot of things that it shouldn't. And yeah, I mean, even amongst like a lot of any level of play that I see, Kami players can get away with a lot of jump light kick a lot of the time, because people are hesitant to try to anti-air if they don't consider themselves to be prepared to deal with the immediate dive kick. So I think the risk reward skews more towards having dive kick as the backup option and jump short as the conditioning tool. Like, this is another... Shut this up. This is another instance where it's like, I think that one of Kami's major strengths compared to the rest of the cast is that she doesn't have to do drive rush cancels to convert well off of all of her hits. She has, like, one of the best specials in the game for just converting off of lights, mediums, heavies, whatever. So in this instance, I think that it's probably, when you're not at, like, full drive gauge, I think Kami has an incredible value in just her ability to do regular spiral arrow instead of doing drive rush routes, and then that will put you at, you know, that will help keep her drive gauge advantage over the opponent, and that's like a major tool that she has. That there's a lot of instances where a lot of the cast, they have to spend meter to convert off of their stray hits meaningfully, and she does not. So I think regular spiral arrow there instead of the drive rush. And then I think when low on drive rush, or low on drive gauge, I think this is another instance where jumping light kick becomes better than dive kick, because, especially against these Shotos, because punish counter DP will drain like a huge chunk off of your drive gauge when you do it, but because jumping light kick has 10 active frames, it will almost always get counter hit rather than punish countered when anti-aired. because it has to wait until all 10 active frames are done before it's considered punish counterable, which is not the way dive kick works. Dive kick, you're considered punish counterable immediately as soon as the active frame starts. Jumping a light kick, very rare for it to lead to punish counter and rob you of that extra drive gauge. A handful of key combo optimizations. So off of this in the corner, we're talking about this. You can go into that, into light drill, into heavy uppercut. If you wanted to go into level 1, you would do like this, into the semi-charged heavy. Into the level 1. I messed that up, but... etc. Or just one confirm it into level 1. And so on. The main things is that if you're like, you know, this, any reasonable distance from the corner, you can do that route, which is basically the exact same damage as your corner combo anyways. It's literally the same combo, basically. If you're a bit further from that, a lot of the times if people stand confirm, you'll see a lot of Kami players do that, okay? Kami players know this route. This is the suboptimal route. This is not a... There is an inherently better route in 99.9% of circumstances. There's like a tiny little freak incident where like if you get like a really long combo with lots of scaling, then doing that into level 1 is more optimal. But no, in the majority of circumstances, you don't do this. You do this, where you walk forwards and then you do back roundhouse again. So walk up, back roundhouse again. So that did 2377 damage versus this, which does 2246. So like about 130 more damage. It has more corner carry. It builds more super. And there's two variations of this. It's quite difficult to get this like perfectly with the micro walk, where you can get them at like this exact height, which is perfect for going into the... So sometimes you won't have the charge if you're doing it in mid-screen to get it into the heavy uppercut. But medium will always work consistently, and you can still do level 1 off of this, and again, it's better than the other route. More corner carry, more damage. So that does 2713 versus this does 2654, and but the other one has more carry. There's some watching.
Is fucking nasty.
Watching, you know, some of the criticisms levied against some of the decision makings of like Hurricane and Akira and so on, and I think that personally, I had to, in a broader sense, understand, like, come up with much more abstract ways of thinking about logic to really unlock or crack why some actions, some players, and the things that they did were just statistically more successful than other things that made more immediate logical sense to me. And one, I think jumping in this game and with Cammy generally quite strong. I think even if you're losing the interactions, I think relatively speaking, you can lose them in a way that is not that bad to you in terms of your drive gauge, especially if you're getting counter hit and not punish countered for the anti-airs. I think that the amount of health that you're likely to lose is pretty low in a lot of instances. That allows you to manage your drive gauge and your super by taking smaller chunks of damage through those interactions. So that's a logic to jumping or using some of this stuff very frequently. I think that you know, Guile can quite easily flash kick the hooligan. And one other thing, and I talk about this in my Lily videos, my Lily Tech videos, is that in a psychological way, one, there is a value in stubbornness and shamelessness that puts psychological pressure on the opponent. You know, the something that can cause them anxiety over what's going to happen next. And there's a shamelessness of doing stuff like that that will make people flinch and second guess what would have normally been their usual gameplay in fighting against more fundamental type of play. And I think that that's like breaking up, like there's an important level of the psychology of fighting games where you need to at least have some percentage of breaking up what seems practical and logical in order to throw the opponent off of their rhythm, off of your rhythm, off of things like that. Overall, I think that there's a lot of actions that are just their relative risk-reward means that you can kind of shamelessly throw yourself at an opponent in ways that can benefit you in the long run, even if you take a lot of hits in the meantime. And other than that, I also think that there is, to varying degrees and in different situations, for different characters, different whatever, but I do think there's a value in doing decidedly bad things just so long as you can make the opponent still have to think about the option. Like, I think there is a value, and I talk about this in my Lily videos, of using her not as good options, at least frequently enough that it adds to the opponent's mental stack for what they have to think about, try to anticipate, and try to play around. And that additional mental stack will make the rest of their game plan suffer in a way that will just naturally benefit you in infinite number of situations to come. Alright, I watched quite a bit of the match footage, and my basic observations as like a sober outsider looking in on the footage and measuring certain instances, measuring certain data points. My main key points that I see in your play that leave the most opportunity for easy and immediate growth, easy and immediate increase in power level, let's say, is the amount of potential value left by scrambles. Lots of scrambles, specifically lots of like improvised combos, lots of doing suboptimal conversions or dropping certain or dropping certain confirms, multi-hitting confirms, or in instances where you're like a certain distance away and then you do like 1 or 2 or 3 lights in a row, but like the last one is misspaced, and so you do like jab, jab, stand jab, and the second one misses, and the opponent immediately mashes out once they're out of the block stun and they hit you. There's a lot of scrambles and like scrappy interactions for which statistically in many of these matches you end up on the back foot of a lot of the scrambles. And that doesn't necessarily speak to like one single element of your play, but that is an overall trend. There's a lot of scrappy situations where a lot of your percentage of your life lost per round is going towards. So let's see if we can see an example of that. So I think in terms of, this is like a separate point, but I think in terms of the corner pressure, I think that in this game especially, it makes sense. Like, the most basic sense to me, in my understanding of corner pressure in this game, is that you, like, you're in mid-screen,
you land a hit and then you like drive rush cancel, so now you're down to half your bar, but then you get Oki and then you do whatever pressure you want to the opponent, and then rather than continue to pressure them and go in with dive kicks and certain things like that, especially regular dive kicks, etc., or lots of situations, there's a lot of one of the things is that in this game, because all of your buttons are minus, right? Your jabs are minus. Very few of your buttons are naturally plus on block. Eventually, you'll have to go and leave a huge gap. So every time you do like any block pressure and you go from like a jab to a light kick, well, that's a pretty sizable gap between those two. So just even being near the opponent, even if you are doing normal Oki and normal pressure, there will almost always be a gap or a situation where you are vulnerable while applying pressure, which makes continuing to pressure the opponent like more especially dangerous, especially in a game where the option that they're going to be looking for, most likely when they're sitting there in the corner, they just took a combo. While they were getting comboed, they're regenerating drive gauge because they don't lose drive gauge when they're taking damage. So they're going to be sitting there in the corner and they're going to look for like a low forward drive rush, etc. And they're going to try to look for one of those gaps, like a gap between a -2 jab and a 5-frame light kick. They're going to look for a 6-framer, 7-framer, or 8-framer to bust out, or some other variation of that. Dive kick can also get beat by. So there is like a lot of risk just involved in even being close, even when you are clearly at the advantage, because it's kind of difficult to get back to a safe distance. And I think that in this game, it makes more sense to control the opponent, like, rather than pressure the opponent constantly. I think it makes sense to control the opponent from like a range where there's significantly less risk, and then harass their drive gauge, but mostly be concerned with waiting for your own to regenerate enough that you can then get a much, much safer way in of just sliding in and doing another drive rush cancel. And that is like how you can really like boil down the pressuring art to a science, where a lot of your time spent in the corner is just slight, like, distant harassment and maintaining control while trying to stay out of your opponent's many, many options that they have to reverse the situation and make things bad for you, until you get your resources back and then just exchange resources for a free way in. That's kind of how the whole game works, but I feel like that's especially true in the corner. So anyways, let's see, I wasn't paying attention. My ADHD triggers and I have to scroll backwards for a second. Probably could have, oh yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm not trying to like micromanage individual matches or individual sets, because any player can go back and look at their own match footage and say like, oh, I messed that up, oh, I messed that up, oh, it would have been slightly more optimal. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to identify like overarching trends that appear in many, many situations across many, many matches. This is one thing I will say, is that the charge overhead is not optimal damage. It does a lot of damage by itself, but it applies heavier scaling than just doing a jump in, and that heavy scaling will affect all of your damage routes. So even if you just do like the most basic combo possible, so that does like 3,040 versus if you were to just do 3,160, and that'll only get more, the damage differential will only get more disparate when you add in, when you make the combo longer with drive gauge, etc. So this is almost never optimal in that sense. The only thing that it's better than a regular jump in for is it builds you more drive gauge back on the hits if you weren't already full. But that was not a factor there. So just so you know, that's not optimal damage. So I'm looking for those kind of scrambly situations that I was talking about. So that's, you know, a trade, etc., and that's a result of the fact that everything is so minus, and that naturally, like, that's, like, constantly what's on people's minds in this game when they're blocking. They're like, most people, in my opinion, this is what I think when I play the game, when I'm blocking anything, I'm like, when is there going to be a gap where they do something minus on block, and then they do, like, a medium or a light kick that's not a rapid cancel, etc., or not like a drive rush cancel. So in that instance, that should have been like a +2 into a 5-framer. So I think there was just something weird that happened there, because that should have been a true frame trap. Or sorry, a 6-framer. Wait, right? Yeah, no, that trade makes sense. Yeah. And unfortunately for Cammy, her trades with both standing medium punch and back medium punch often have a bit more pushback than is useful for converting off of them. But I think that, like, the tendency to have those kind of gaps and such, and to do buttons like stand medium punch that are -2 on block and don't have very much pushback, will at least put you in situations where the opponent has the opportunity to press their own mediums and take their turns. And I think when there's a disparity in the drive gauge, especially if you spent drive gauge to apply pressure to them, then that can go poorly for you in this game. And let's try to find an instance of it just by going through the match footage. How did we get burnt out here? Right. Punish counter. Okay, and then a wake up DP.
Purpose here. Play patient.
See, and so this is like, you know, slight optimizations again, not trying to like micromanage individual matches. I understand that like you make decisions in real time, and everyone does, but like there's like one of the easiest ways I think for you to get like a significant advantage over what you already have is some of these combos optimization, because this could have gone into the standing heavy punch target combo and done significantly more damage, super gain, and corner carry, etc. This is another thing. This is another thing that I've noticed in a lot of your matches that I've watched. Not just in here, but you have a very common occurrence where you react to a whiff in front of you with a light when it would not have really been difficult, when it would not have been relatively harder, or it's not like the opponent would have recovered if you had swung with a medium. So I think there are instances in here where like you shimmy, but then you do a light. And then, so, like, the difference between... You're in burnout here, so it's not the case in point. But I was looking at a bunch of situations where you would, like, react to some small whiff in front of you. Or, like, someone would mess up a Tatsu. Someone would misface a dive kick, etc. Someone would whiff something. And you had, like, plenty of time to do it. But you would always react with light. And then you would, like, convert into, say... that... versus, so that was like 2-1-1-8 damage versus like if you were to react with crouch strong instead, significantly more damage. And if you just do it immediately, especially on stand confirms, you have a variety of options there. 3,000 damage off of that. There was just like a very significant damage differential in a lot of situations where I feel like it would mean a lot long term for in a lot of those scramble situations, or not scrambles, but like quick whiff situations, for your default instinct to move more towards crouch strong instead of a jab. Not super relevant there, because you're burnout and it's not... I mean, you probably could have killed off of that last conversion, but... with level 2. But, you know, those decisions are very difficult to make in this game at the pace that it goes. I'm waiting to find like another instance where you like do like 2 actions on block, but the second one is misspaced. Okay, see, that was another instance. Big whiff on this on the heavy kick. That's what that was, right? Yeah, big whiff on the heavy kick. And the reaction is jab, jab, jab. Even if you do some of those, like some reactions with crouch strong by default, and then like miss some because it wasn't quite fast enough, I still think that long term the differential for the things that you will hit with crouch strong will statistically, and this is just from looking at the scenarios where you could have crouch stronged and the damage differential between doing a jab versus doing a crouch strong, and the frequency with which these occur, and also watching other Kami players and measuring the frequency with which they get like those small reactions where they get crouch strong and stuff, and how much value it yields them. I think that that's like a big opportunity. Overall, I get the sense that your play is very buttonsy, and sometimes, you know, it gets you trades, it gets you counter hits, it gets you hits here and there, and sometimes it's a bit inconsistent. So like that time, like there was like a stutter step, there was like a moment of awkwardness, and you reacted with the crouch strong, and then it got a counter hit and you got this conversion. But there's other instances. But then you did like crouch jab throw, so you did -2 button into throw, so 7-frame gap there that would lose to trades with strikes, which like there's other instances throughout this stream and throughout one of your other streams that I watch where you would do like jab throw in that same way, and you would get beaten out because the opponent would mash as soon as they were done with any amount of blocks done. Oh shit. What was that? I blanked. I wasn't paying attention. Yeah, so that's another instance, a little drop, etc. But like the drops and misconversions do add up in a way that would have meant probably the round in this case. So.
Does he even kill?
That's good. I do approve of drive rush low short with Kami. I don't this is a point that I want to get to later, so I'll talk about it in a bit. I'm still looking for the overarching. That was nice. I confuse myself with what I don't have like a criticism of the decision making here per se, but I at least I ask myself, like, mathematically, is there like a better option to do here? You know, I'm like, I wonder, because you could have burnt out without spending level 3, and I don't think level 3 would kill here, and I don't think you had a route that would have killed. So you could have burnt out with like a level 1, and actually, wait a minute, I just realized. I stopped paying attention because I kind of skipped it. I assumed that he won here.
Does he even kill?
Oh, I didn't realize. I skipped after it because he obviously had the kill. Okay, he just fucked that up. Alright, good to know. I was wondering why the round was for you and not him. But yeah, the reason why I kind of bring this up is because, one, I think that even at this point, there is a potential for things to go wrong, and that potential, in a non-mathematical, non-database, sort of spiritual sense, I feel that it's good to hang on to at least one bar of super in case things go drastically wrong for no reason. Either through human error or freak scenarios or freak reads or whatever, but it didn't matter here. But like just for example, like I don't love the Oki that most characters get off of level 3s. So like Marisa using level 3 makes perfect sense, but I don't love a lot of level 3s for most of the cast. Cammy's doesn't have meaningful corner carry. She basically stays exactly the same spot that she starts the move in. She has to drive rush to get an Oki or anything off of it, and it's not very good Oki even with the drive rush, which means she has to give up some of the drive gain she just regenerated through the animation, and it would have burnt out with a level 2 or a level 1 probably, or just a standing heavy punch into drive impact. So in the grand scheme of things, I'm not saying that I know what the best option here would be, but I feel like there's something there that, because whenever I see a level 3 used and it doesn't kill, I always instinctively feel that something somewhere went wrong for that to be the result. Not always, but usually I feel that level 3s that don't kill, something kind of like could have been optimized somewhere else. That's just my instinctive feeling that I've gotten after watching a ton of matches where level 3s or holding on to level 3s were incredibly wasteful.
Every day we stray further away from fucking God, bro. We really do. Stop a character. After charge arrow, you can forward jump for a meaty throw or standing medium punch. Nudge, man. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Alright, so in a lot of these instances, this, I should go without saying, I wasn't quite paying attention to that, but I think that was on a standing opponent. No, that was, that's crouching animation. Yeah, okay. I think. Sometimes I confuse myself when they're actually in hit stun as to whether or not they're standing or crouching.
Dude, this pisses me off. Why are they never standing?
I have questioned. I haven't done a ton of labbing with like what you can possibly do to make the punishes on you know, anti-air perfect parry more consistent, because I often ask myself that. I'm like, how can you actually tell what the right what the right speed of move to pick so that it'll punish counter them while they're standing on the ground and not still airborne? I don't know that there's a great option to pick from. Let's see, what does Cammy have, like a 5-frame DP that she can just do? Yeah. I don't know, maybe. Who knows? Okay, so another like little tap could have been converted, etc. And there's like a lot of these instances, and there's a lot more of these than in like if I were to pull up like a Kazunoko match. You see very, very little of that, and like every single hit, like the slightest hit is always turned into like death for the opponent in a way that is very suffocating. And it's when I've played against some of like the really fuck-ass like super strong players, like I played against Big Bird a couple years ago at EVO, and there's an aspect, there's like an emotional aspect to playing it that's much more than just watching the footage of it. There's like, if you watch the individual decision making, it doesn't quite convey just how like completely suffocating it feels to play against them. Like you feel completely caged in every single option. Like your slightest poking your tail out of the cage that you're constantly being pushed further and further back into always gets you punished, and in the most oppressive way possible. And like it's such like a drowning, like lungs burning kind of experience that's difficult to describe. And And again, it doesn't communicate that through just watching the footage, but when you play it, there's something different than just normal fighting game decision. Oh, they got a whiff punish. Oh, they got whatever. So yeah, I just in general, and that was like another, button in a whiff, etc. Like, I think shoring up the exact spacing on like how much pushback some of these moves do and some of these block string sequences would make like a lot of these weird things where like you press a button, but it's not like quite the best button in the situation, and it kind of yields a weird results, etc. And there's a lot of like stray jabs that aren't leading to anything, or like little whiffs. Sometimes you get away with them, sometimes they get punished. Yeah, whiff, medium punch there, etc. I think that light kick is actually dangerous to do at that range, even if he stand blocks. I think there's a couple instances back here where you did the same thing and the opponent just blocked, and you got punished for that buffer off of that situation.
What the fuck?
Yeah, that'll I don't know. I was thinking about that as it happened. I was like, Cammy doesn't have the best, but probably jumping medium punch would be the safest option.
How? This is so 8.
So I understand, probably distracted, but could have killed with a super there, etc. I don't know whether, because you clearly got the round without using the super, so mathematically you're put in an advantage, but in terms of the theoretical risk of what could have happened, maybe killing with the super long term is more consistent for other rounds. It's hard to say. It's, the natural questions of how supers work in these games.
I'm punishing anything. I'm just fucking not playing the game, bro.
One thing, okay, so in general, let me look at my notes that I took while I was watching a bunch of this. Let's see. Most, like, a lot of opportunity cost lost for scrambles, drops, improvisations that are not prepared to yield huge reward, and suboptimal actions. My next note was dive kicks are a bit far out frequently. Not enough normal jumping. This is one of the things that you even talk about earlier in one of these sections where you're watching some of the other Cammy players and you're criticizing them for jumping too much. I actually disagree. My note while I was watching you play is that normal jumping, you should probably normal jump significantly more. I think normal jumping is much safer than dive kicking, just in the nature of the float states and how the punish counter works, and the potential for you to get beat by neutral jumps or like backswing blow or whatever, etc. Drive rush buttons can clip you while in the airborne, etc. So regular jumps, this is one of those things that, again, the data, I know what it feels like. I know it feels like because I felt that for a long time, where I didn't want to jump even with characters who logically are really strong at jumping. Cammy has dive kick, aka more jump options, aka stronger jump, and jumping is obviously more of a part of her character than the rest of the cast. And this is already a game where jumping is very strong. You can very easily get huge damage off of like no effort, and you risk very little in return, because not a lot of the anti-airs yield anywhere near as much damage as just normal combos. Like, if you're just normally doing pressure to the opponent and the opponent reversals with like a 6-frame medium drive rush, they'll do like 3 or 4 times the damage that they would have done if they just anti-aired you if you jumped at them. So the risk reward totally skewed. Jumping, you risk way less, and you get to waste a lot of time while you're airborne, while you're flipping out of the airborne, while you're juggled by a single uppercut, etc. All that time you get to spend regenerating your drive gauge. So yeah, there's a lot of advantages to jumping, and Cammy in this like mental stack psychological effect is that you can get away with a lot more regular jumps than most other characters in the cast because their natural psychological instinct is to only anti-air when they consider themselves prepared to beat your dive kick. And if they're not prepared for that, whereas, like, a lot of the times where you're using dive kicks, you're using it from a further spacing away than I think it's necessarily the best for. Like, you use it a lot from, like, out here, and you space it to, like, get in. But the problem with that is even if it works, and it does frequently, but it's, it puts you in a situation where you can sometimes you're minus and then you have to hold whatever pressure your opponent does, and you've taken damage from that plenty of times. Sometimes you're plus, but you're never in throw range, so you still have to wind up either using a huge gap or doing some medium into drive rush anyways to get into throw range and get a throw mix-up going. And the other thing about it is that, again, just being anywhere near to your opponent leaves you open because at some point your block string has to end, and then you're often still in range for a low or like a 6-frame button if you do like jab into light kick, etc. There's a 7-frame gap there. So that inherent risk, I feel, is different from... Whereas if you do a lot of jump-ins, you get much more plus, much more theoretical reward. You get into throw range while being plus enough to get throws much more frequently. The potential like rush down benefit of getting a jump-in on block, much better than getting a dive kick on block. And I feel that dive kicks in her kit are designed for getting punish counters. So used at a bit closer spacing and... used to, like, encroach on the enemy's space, make them want to hit buttons to stop your forward approach, and then dive kick over their buttons, like their crouch strongs, their low forwards, and then get a punish counter close enough so that off of the punish counter you can link a back medium punch target combo for the big damage off of it. And I just, like, if I watch, like, your matches versus, like, say, Punk's Cammy matches, the number of dive kicks that yield punish counter and then huge reward versus the number of dive kicks that get anti-aired or put you or he in a bad situation, etc., is very skewed. Punk is constantly landing punish counter dive kicks and getting freeways in with regular jumps, and your dive kicks are kind of like generally beneficial. Long term, you get more hits than you get punished for it, certainly, but it's more of a mixed bag. And it doesn't, I feel, make the opponent as scared of hitting buttons on the ground in such a way that they stop swinging at you as much on the ground, which is where you take most of your damage in these matches, is through these, like, close-range grounded interactions.
Is crouching medium kick from Luke frame 8? If it's frame 8, he's fucked. That matchup.
Like these. Like most of the cast, you know. Every character works this way, but this is what I mean. This is where you take most of your damage, either on your offense, their offense, or just something in between. This is one of those... this is a situation where I actually... Like, this is a perfect example, in my opinion, where I completely agree with the forward jump. Because forward jump, no dive kick. You're pretty low on drive gauge in this particular instance because... Why were you below 4 bars? What happened here? Oh, drive rush, and then you're down to, like, 1.5 bars. You get hit, and then you hold up, and then you get uppercut, and then you back roll, and you've managed to regen another half a bar now, so you're actually... pretty close to being able to do like an DP, an EXDP, and still have your meter back, still not burn yourself out. So, and like, what damage were you going to risk by jumping? He might have been able to kill you if he had the forethought to anti-air with EXDP into the follow-up that Luke has off of his EXDP. Maybe that would have killed you, but in general, that's kind of what I mean, where, like, you got anti-aired, but there's benefits that you get from the situation, and I think losing like 5 of those interactions is still preferable to losing a single footsies interaction in this game, where you just get all of your health melted. Now, I don't know if what this specifically says or speaks to about ways that you can improve your micro decision making, but when I was taking statistics for your Cammy matches versus like other really strong Cammy matches, etc., the frequency with which there's like a footsies interaction where you're plus or you like walk backwards, the frequency with which you are landing whiff punishes, like punish counter whiff punishes by walking backwards and then doing standing heavy kick or low forward or low medium punch, etc., or the number of times where you're getting successful space traps compared to some of the other ones is not as... Your frequency when you find these close range interactions, your frequency of actually getting like walkbacks into whiff punishing the opponent for overstepping happens about as frequently as you actually getting hit by the opponent and then comboed into like a drive rush thing. So that is an area where it's, you know, ideally we would like to see a different skewing. The other thing is just the overall statistics for your frequency of doing throws and shimmies. Your matches, you land a lot fewer throws and a lot fewer shimmies per match than a lot of other players. And that's probably just like an element where something to do with how you're rushing down, because your approach is often based on getting dive kick spacings, which again don't leave you in throw range, so I understand that. But there's also lots of situations where your tendency to actually throw the opponent or shimmy them is quite low compared to the percentages that other players do rock, paper, scissors. Alright, gonna go through the rest of my notes. A lot of close range clips. I made a video on pushback, aka safety of buttons relative to dangerous 5-frame, 6-frame, 7-frame, and 8-frame moves, and so on. I'll send you... I don't know how many of my videos you watched already, because you said you watched the main Cammy optimization one, which was the big one that I did, but I will send you a link, or I guess I'll put it in the description of this video, for... the pushback one that I'm talking about. Let me find an instance of it first.
Gotcha, medium punch does not reach. Pretty sure.
Right, that's a normal interaction. So there's lots of instances where you do like 3 lights in a row and then you do like forward heavy kick. And that's kind of the situation that I'm referring to. But... okay, so this is a situation... so, like, these are, like, the kind of micro spacing block stun situations that I'm talking about that are where both you and the opponent, like, you constantly find yourself vulnerable in just the way this game works. Because you woke up, he was a little bit from walking backwards, he was a little bit away, you did crouching light punch. Now, eyeballing it, I don't think you would be able to reach with another light punch here. So you only got 1 light punch, and of course that's -2, so if you can't rapid cancel into anything else, what other options do you have? Because if you try to go to stand light kick, his 6-frame medium punch is going to beat you. So you did crouch light punch, but then you were in a situation where you had like no options that would have won against crouch strong, especially crouch strong drive rush. So this is one of those situations where you woke up crouch jab and you were correct in that he didn't do anything and you took your turn, but then you were left in a situation where you couldn't continue your light block string and there's no other button that would have worked. So in those instances, I have to like micro ask myself, what is the alternate choice? Like, what is the alternate decision? Your theoretical decisions, your theoretical options. You can do some sort of option selector OS off of the crouch jab. So you can do like crouch jab, and have the second one whiff, but buffer it into a drill or something. Or you can wake up with a different button. Like you could wake up with standing light kick, which is 1 frame slower, but has significantly more pushback on block, and might have gotten you out of the range of his crouch strong. That's another possibility. Or you could have done the light punch into drive rush. Now, unfortunately, some characters have the luxury of doing that. Cammy is not one of them. All of her lights into drive rush have massive gaps anyways, so that doesn't help her. Or you could have tried to do a cancel on the light punch into a hooligan. However, I think that Luke's crouch strong would have beaten most hooligan cancels. Or at least recovered into... I think it would have just won. I remember... Luke's crouch strong I've tested more than any other 6-frame button in the game in these sorts of interactions, and it's very difficult to get around. When you, like, hit a light, and you can't do any more lights, and your light's -1 or -2, Luke's crouch strong is so annoying to get around. So, what are some more other options? Choose a different button while getting up, choose... stand light kick, maybe. Stand strong, crouch strong, back strong. Maybe, I'm not sure. Or accept that he will mash and that he will take advantage of it and try to fish for a perfect parry. And that's the other thing statistically when I was measuring a lot of your matches. There's a lot of scenarios where I think the parts of your gameplay where you're taking damage... and certain situations like this where you're getting pressured, I feel that throwing in the occasional fishing for perfect parry at around this distance in these exact situations is like the exact thing that your current play is missing that would skew things even more heavily in your favor. Because, like awkward situations where you're both in each other's low forward range and it's not super clear who's plus or whatever, and someone does a blight, but it's minus on block, and it's not clear how close they are or whatever. Perfect parrying the limbs that people throw out to, like, wrestle control over those situations, or perfect parrying their predictable kind of meaties and block strings is, like, the strongest... It's, like, what the move was made for. So, I do think that you could pacify a lot of the activity from your opponent that ends up damaging you by throwing in a lot more perfect parries.
I have 8 on anti-air now. Oh my god. Yeah. One anti-air led into all of that, maybe.
Now... this is the topic of a different video of mine, but I want to see where his drive gauge was at during some of this. You can drive reversal when he does a fireball at this range. You can guarantee drive reversal to knock him down. I'm just like micro-stepping that there's some instances where you can have the advantage. In this situation, it really doesn't matter because if you guess wrong, you're going to die anyways because he has level 3, so there's not a good decision to make here, but if he didn't have level 3 and he was like below 3 bars of drive gauge, I would consider using wake up drive reversal on Luke to deal with his throw loop. Because he does not have, as I put in one of my recent videos, he does not have very good anti-wake up drive reversal buttons and meaties without safe jump setups. And his punishes all require meter to be any good. A lot of, like, missed DP anti-airs this entire stream. I have no room to talk there because I can only DP anti-air if I'm at like peak mental condition and not at all bothered or annoyed by anything. But it you know, obviously goes without saying that it's something I noticed. Anyways, etc. So let's continue going through my notes for your overall stream and trends. Let's see. Very few throws, relatively speaking. Very few perfect parries or abusing certain defensive options that opponent characters are not well equipped to defeat. Inconsistent decisions on certain drive rush cancels. Sometimes you're very cognizant of your drive gauge and that, like, you get a confirm and you won't cancel it into a drive rush. Like, you get a counter hit, stand jab, crouch strong, and then you just do heavy spiral arrow when you're not at, like, full drive gauge, which I agree with. But sometimes you do overspend in, like, really sudden ways. An observation, not necessarily a criticism. Theoretically, you might try more hooligan set play in certain instances. All hooligan setups have the advantage of, not against characters with anti-air DPs, but all hooligan setups have the advantage of being really good at regenerating your drive gauge on block or on hit, obviously. Let's see. Rate of close range blocking interactions into space traps and successful whiff punishes is low compared to that of situational losses. That's what I said earlier. Anti-airs frequently missed. In close range, when not far enough for the ideal standing light punch, crouching medium punch distance, crouching medium punch is getting interrupted by the opponent's mashing very frequently. There's a lot of instances where you did land punish counter dive kicks and you were in range to... A lot of instances where you were in range to get back medium punch target combo, but you still converted into like stand light punch, etc., which is like a very significant difference in utility and damage and super gain, etc. Tendency to do actions with longer startup after a period of both players not doing much in neutral, like heavy knuckles, hooligans, or dive kicks, in a way that sometimes got you clipped. Let's see. Not getting caught by low forwards in awkward close-range pressure, very frequently caught by jabs, meaning could afford to walk backwards more or hold up back to jump out of awkward close-range situations to correct button choices to win these interactions, plus add more forward jump EX dive kicks in tight situations when quite close to the opponent and uncertain about their button tendencies, or regular forward jump light kick if far enough away that your forward jump light kick will still hit the opponent cross up, or putting yourself in range where the opponent cannot do two lights of their own in sequence, so they would need to do a light into a medium, thus leaving a gap for you to exploit on block, and then sitting in waiting for them to block by crouch blocking in front of them. More uncertain crouch medium kick or crouch medium punch into light knuckle. Right. Okay. So, like most players in Street Fighter 6, your like panic buttons in a lot of these interactions are like crouching medium kick or crouching medium punch into drive rush cancel, and Cammy is like blessed enough to have crouching medium punch into light knuckle. So there's a lot of instances throughout this stream where you're losing drive gauge on block in an unnecessary situation because you felt like something was scrambly and that the opponent might hit a button and you needed to take control of the situation, so you hit like crouching medium kick in a drive rush, but it just got spent on block anyways and you didn't get anything out of it and you just lost the drive gauge on block. Doing it on block is not necessarily a bad thing, but there were a lot of instances where I could clearly tell that you hit the button just to check the situation, and it was not necessarily your intention to spend that much drive gauge to start pressure, go on offense, especially if it wasn't going to hit. And that's exactly the situation where her crouch medium punch or crouch medium kick into light spin knuckle is good for. Because if the opponent does press into it, it combos on counter hit for crouch medium kick, combos normally on crouch medium punch, and it has a gap that can sometimes catch the opponent in those awkward scramble situations. It's just a tool that's very good for that. That doesn't cost you a bunch of drive gauge to check the situation. Right, charged overhead is not the optimal post-stun damage. I already said that earlier. Usually react to most close-range stuff with a light into a medium. Could get higher reward by reacting with medium. I said that earlier. Using crouching heavy punch instead of stutter steps in certain interactions will sometimes have a greater tendency to result in consistent high reward. So, for instance, rather than do a situation... This is like the Bison theory. If you watched Street Fighter V being played, this is how M. Bison as a character worked, where every single character had, like, plus frames. So if you were playing, like, Cammy or Karen, you would continue to go and do, like, medium punch, and you'd be plus 3 on block, or whatever. And, like, you would play by either doing a frame trap by itself, plus 3 into plus 3, or you would go... Or you would put, like, stutter steps in, so you would get, like, a small gap, and then fish for a counter hit with a jab or a medium or something. Whereas Bison, rather than do something plus and then walk forwards and then do another button, Bison has moves that are, like, built into his toolkit to do that stutter stepping for him. So he, instead of doing that, he would do one button on block, and then he would do a slower button that would move him forwards for him and then be plus on block while advancing as well. And Cammy has that luxury as well. So rather than doing like something that's like rather than pressuring and then trying to stagger step the opponent but to get like a counter hit with like a jab or something and then leaving yourself open in that regards, or trying to get a counter hit with a little stutter step into medium punch or something. Rather than that, you can also, in a lot of these instances, just do crouch fierce. So rather than moving, just do crouch fierce, and it's cleaner than doing stutter steps, and the reward that you get from doing a heavier action is generally better. So if we do like block count 2... Mainly, this is mainly good when you're at like quite close and you're close enough that you can throw in these, because this is like one of the things that Cammy is really good at in this game is throw tech or delay crouch fierce, thus hitting you for delay teching, etc. Or doing delay crouch jab or delay low forward or any other delay action. So she like gets in your face, does this, and then just abuses the shit out of crouch fierce. And Crouch Fierce was not nerfed at all, so to my and many other people's surprise in this season. So that is still an incredibly strong tool. That it's like utility in how effective that psychological strategy is at stealing turns in that way and fishing for delayed button actions in that way, and its sheer reward value when you use it in the right situations pretty close to the opponent because of how heavily you can convert off of it, make it a very useful, a very powerful tool. So those are most of my notes for watching your entire stream and measuring some of your matches and such. That's my completely whatever outsider fucking just eyeballing it hot takes, I guess.